This video examines the military forces of the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom, a Hellenistic state that emerged in northern Afghanistan in the aftermath of Alexander the Great's conquests. Our narrative unfolds within the broader context of Alexander's campaigns and their far-reaching consequences. In 334 BCE, Alexander the Great launched his invasion of Persia. Over the course of several battles, he defeated King Darius III and, by 330 BCE, had conquered the entire Achaemenid Empire. To secure these new territories, Alexander established numerous towns, cities, and military garrisons. He populated these settlements with natives, Greek and Macedonian soldiers, and mercenaries. Alexander's cities held strategic significance, serving as key centers for political and military control, as well as for commerce. After Alexander died, his empire was partitioned by his generals. Bactria was incorporated into the Seleucid Kingdom. During this time, the Bactrian Greeks grew in economic and military power, and eventually defected and established the independent Greco-Bactrian Kingdom. However, the independent Bactrian Greeks faced numerous security or military challenges. A major threat came from the persistent incursions of nomads from Central Asia, which required constant vigilance and adaptable strategies suited to the region's political and geographic conditions. There was also pressure from the Seleucids seeking to regain control over Bactria, and later encroachment by the Parthians, who replaced the Seleucids as the dominant power in Persia. The Bactrian Greek kingdom flourished because of its formidable army. However, our knowledge of the Greco-Bactrian military, its size, organization, armaments, and tactics remains limited because of a paucity of written records, fragmentary archaeological evidence, and the interpretive challenges associated with numismatic data. Although information on the Greco-Bactrian military is very limited, there are a few sources that provide some clues. One such source is the work of the Greek historian Polybius, which recounts a battle in 209 BCE between the Seleucid king Antiochus III and Euthydemus, the ruler of the Greco-Bactrian Kingdom. Antiochus was campaigning to recover the eastern satrapies that had broken away from Seleucid rule. Euthydemus, however, refused to submit without a fight. Polybius reports that Euthydemus deployed a force of 10,000 cavalry alongside the heavily armored and formidable Bactrian cataphracts, whose predecessors fought in the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE. Euthydemus' objective was to attack Antiochus's army while it was vulnerable during a river crossing. However, Antiochus, having received surveillance reports from his spies, preempted the attack by force marching overnight a detachment of 2,000 of his best cavalry and 20,000 of his elite infantry ahead of his main army. He reached the river before the Greco-Bactrian force could fully deploy. Euthydemus did not use infantry in this engagement. However, this does not mean that he lacked such forces. More likely, the choice was a strategic one, given the massive size of the Seleucid army, purportedly comprising 100,000 infantry and 20,000 cavalry, which even at half the numbers Euthydemus had no realistic chance of confronting head-on. Euthydemus also had war elephants, but for strategic reasons as well, chose not to deploy them during the battle at the Aras River. He later gave some or all his elephants to Antiochus after a peace settlement. The unfolding of events at the Aras River provides some insights regarding Greco-Bactrian military capabilities. Despite mounting a determined assault, Euthydemus's cavalry was no match for the Seleucid army. It was soundly defeated with significant losses. This demonstrates the limitations of an all-cavalry force against the Macedonian phalanx. Another source of information about the Greco-Bactrian cavalry comes from the numerous coins minted by its various kings. Coins issued by the Bactrian Greek king Euthydemus depict him wearing a Boeotian cavalry helmet, a style traditionally associated with central Greek city-states. The Boeotian helmet was used by the Thessalian cavalry, an elite force that served in Alexander's army, shown here on the Alexander sarcophagus. 900 Thessalian horsemen accompanied Alexander as far as the Oxus River in Bactria and Sogdiana before they were discharged. It is possible that some remained as settlers, later contributing to the formation and organization of the Greco-Bactrian cavalry. Another link is suggested by the Thessalian name Caeneus, the purported founder of the Hellenistic city of Aecanum on the Oxus. He might have been one of the 900 Thessalians who visited that location during Alexander's military operations. Further clues are to be found again on Euthydemus coins. The reverse depicts the mythical Dioscuri charging on horseback, brandishing long sarissas, closely resembling the sarissophoroi lancers of Alexander's army. The Dioscuri were revered as guardian deities of horsemen and protectors of cavalry. It makes sense that Euthydemus, who began his career as a cavalry general, would choose this imagery to appear on his coinage. Mounted lancers of this type prominent in Alexander's army do not appear in the later Hellenistic armies of the successors. The Bactrian Greeks maintained such a military unit that was used by Alexander to deal with hit-and-run nomadic warriors, and was well suited to Bactria's physical landscape. A Greco-Bactrian horseman is depicted here on a coin of the Indo-Greek king Hermias. When operating in cohesive, disciplined formations, they were a formidable force. Like Central Asian cataphracts, horses and riders of the Bactrian cavalry were equipped with protective armor. These lance-wielding, armor-clad Greco-Bactrian warriors, veritable tanks of their time, were well suited to the kinds of adversaries they faced and the challenging geographic conditions in which they fought. More than this, it can be said that if Polybius's figure of 10,000 cavalry for the Greco-Bactrian force at the Aras is accurate, then the core Greek Macedonian contingent of this force may have numbered between 2,000 and 3,000. The remainder of Euthydemus's force consisted of heavily armored cataphracts who fought in the Asiatic style. Insights regarding the Greco-Bactrian infantry come from numismatic evidence. The figure of the king Strato on a coin of the Indo-Greek queen Agathoclea is shown wearing a muscle cuirass, anatomically shaped breastplates with front and back panels fastened at the shoulders and sides. Also visible are a scale corset, metal greaves, and thigh guards crafted from leather and reinforced with metal plates. The infantry armament was completed with helmets, shields, spears, and swords. The Greco-Bactrian infantry was probably modeled after Greek city-state hoplites and fought in the phalanx formation. Another feature of the Greco-Bactrian military was a special forces unit equipped with large shields and thrusting spears. These soldiers were probably used for autonomous special operations, as well as serving as flank guards for the infantry during pitched battles. Much like Alexander's elite hypaspists, the total strength of the Greco-Bactrian infantry was likely the same as their cavalry, estimated at around 10,000 soldiers. The next question is, where did the army acquire its recruits? While much remains uncertain, some conclusions can be made. The core of the military came from the Greek settlers of Bactria, particularly those living in fortified cities that also served as military colonies. These urban centers formed the backbone of the army, supplying a steady stream of recruits. Also, the indigenous Bactrian aristocracy was obliged to supply native recruits for military service. The Greek warrior class depended on the cooperation of the indigenous landed nobility, who supplied horse archers, recruits for the infantry, and logistical support. Native Bactrians were likely taught in the Macedonian style of warfare and integrated into the infantry. This mirrored Alexander's epigony. Locals trained to fight using Macedonian tactics. It was the military that enabled a relatively small Greek elite to rule over a vast territory and a significantly larger native population. The Bactrian Greeks would thrive as long as they avoided wasting their military assets on internal conflicts between rival Greek factions, or did not overextend themselves through ambitious territorial expansion. But alas, this they did not do. Thanks for watching. Check out other anti-Zen videos on the Greco-Bactrians.